Grand Rising Soul Family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Brothers and sisters, we have an inspiring and empowering guest today. Marcus Glover will be joining us. So looking forward to dropping in with Marcus on his life's journey, on his experience of not only entrepreneurship, but as an advocate for criminal justice reform, as an advocate for those who do not have a voice, especially in the space of building a life and rebuilding yourself, coming out of not only just financial hardship and societal impact, but coming out of incarceration. So I see Marcus as an altruistic brother who's being of service to the larger community. And Sacred Sons, we have a couple of events that I want you to know about. Coming up next, we have the EMX, the Embodied Masculine Experience in San Diego. I will be leading alongside my brother Vince Matoska Chafin, December 1st through 4th. The EMX is our initiatory experience. It's 4 days of relational alchemy, connection, confrontation, and celebration. On the same weekend, December 1st through 4th, all the way across the pond in Devon, UK, we will be having EMX Devon, led by my brother Kale Kahi, Jason McKenzie, and Andrew Huvar. If you are interested, please go to sacredsons.com. Click on the EMX. All right, with that, our guest today, he is the co-founder of Lockstep Ventures, a venture capital firm that addresses issues that perpetuate racial inequality in the U.S. And he is on a mission to reimagine equity for Black America and is dedicated to empowering Black and women-led companies. Please welcome Marcus Glover.
What an honor. Wow. Power, bro.
Bringing that
fire
full power.
Intro. Wow.
Thank you. You're doing good work out here, man. I'd love to shine a light on you as you are impacting so many lives out there. Can you tell us just a little bit about what's lighting you up right now about the work that you're doing?
Well, what a privilege, Brother Jackson, to spend a couple of minutes with you and this community. I feel like men's work, the underbelly of it is healing work, and invariably all of our work needs to be healing work right now. And I guess that's perhaps the one side of it is the inspiration, and the other side of it is the desperation to address our growth and our healing. I think that has been so much of the journey that I have been on, and the formal ways to try to create an inlet and an outlet for our healing, and then some of the just pure confusion in my life to try to find healing. So I think in this very moment, the notion and the idea that we are engaged in shedding our trauma and addressing our wounds is the inspiration for me.
That's beautiful. Certainly we are in a time of healing. And I saw you were recently in Joshua Tree, California, one of my most favorite places on earth, in a truly healing place. What was that experience like for you?
Man, I'm like, why didn't you tell me 10 years ago? Like, just go to Joshua Tree, you'll get all the answers. I was just absolutely astonished that I'm a seeker, I'm a witness, I am a traveler. And so my foremost thinking and ideas is just to be aware and witness. And so to be in Joshua Tree, it just heightens the senses, for one.
Yes.
The
veil is thin, as we like to say.
Man, the veil is way thin. And so it just heightens an experience, you know, the awareness physically, spiritually, emotionally, virtually all of the sensations just come to life. And so that was just magic. What a gift. Shout out to you all in the SoCal area. So blessed, lucky to have things like that.
Yeah, there truly is a different energy in California, and Southern California specifically. And I just, for the record, our very first Sacred Sons Council was in Joshua Tree, California, at a lovely place called Home of the Heart. And Joshua Tree is it's a home to Sacred Sons. It's a home of a big part of my personal awakening as well.
Wow.
So I know that feeling of being there for the first time.
You know, it just was like, first of all, it was dead silent. Dead silent. Like, you know, when you heard a bird, like you could hear yourself swallow, right? And so with that canvas of quiet, you can hear yourself think. The other thing that I realized was it was so still.
Yeah.
It was I've trekked through the Sahara Desert before, which, you know, that feels like you're on another planet. But the desert was not even as still as Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree just was like completely still. There was no wind. The stone
people.
The stone people.
Boulders.
Yeah, those boulders, they look like altars, you know, like to revere the divine. So it just a recipe for a heightened experience for sure. So what a gift.
Yeah, I was telling you, I'm originally from Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. I moved out here 15 years ago, and I knew I was coming for the ocean, but I did not know I would fall in love with the desert.
Wow.
And the desert it's such a powerful place for potency, for transformation, for healing to take place because of those pieces that you're referencing, because of the stillness. It allows us to really deeply check in. Yeah.
You know, I think you asked the question, what's inspiring me right now? It's almost a 180 because I actually live by the ocean as well. And I never had a relationship with water. New York City kid, and it's no shocker to anyone, but New York is by definition a place of mass distraction. And although it is an island that sits on water, at least for me, I never formed any connection with water. And 2 years ago, mid-pandemic, I moved by the ocean, and it deepened this. So I'm on the beach every morning at sunrise, and for me, it's like a temple. It's an altar. It's a place of healing. It's a place to receive. It's a place to commune with ancestors. And so I have that practice, but to have experienced that in the desert was just next level. So truly the church of the wild, so to speak.
Those were literally the next words out of my mouth. You know, there is church in the wild. There is ceremony in the wild. And in fact, indigenous wisdom tells us that modernity is only 4 days deep. And if you go into the wilderness for 4 days, you know, with water, you know, there's vision quests, there's many practices around it, but to reconnect with the ancestors, with the great mother, the original source of life, that our modernity, our distractions are only 4 days deep. And I know this to be true because I'm inviting men into that. You know, when we do our work, when we do masculine alchemy with Sacred Sons, it's in nature. It's to bring us back. It's to reconnect. You know, we connect men to their hearts. but we also connect men, like I said, to the mother of all. And
Wow.
this is also powerful work in the world, and it's healing. Do you have any personal experience with men's work on your side?
Um, well, yes. I think most recently, I sort of taught myself men's work.
Mm.
I taught myself men's work in what might seem like the most ironic place, which was inside of prisons and jails.
Mm. Right.
Um, Prisons and jails are fascinating places because they are environments of hypermasculinity, but no one wants to talk about masculinity. And so, everyone walks around with the mask of the hypermasculine. You have to
Yeah.
project power, and you have to project a certain footing of masculinity. And but the minute you name it, everyone gets embarrassed and shy.
Right.
So it's a really, really ironic situation. But I think part of that work that I have touched most frequently is to work to get people to take that mask off,
Yes.
and to get in an environment where they can begin to name things, name their feelings, name their experiences, and that transformational work, as you know, is powerful, and probably the most palpable work to be done is just to get men to name it.
Mm. Yeah, to get men to name it, to feel, to become, like I said, connected once again.
Absolutely.
And this is an environment where it can be life and death. So there's no, removing that mask, maybe it looks like starting with just a little bit of a layer of the onion. You know what I'm saying? I imagine. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
because the work that I was introduced to was actually working with adolescents. So these were 15 to 19-year-olds,
Oh, wow.
which I still don't understand how we incarcerate for long sentences. 15 to I can only just think of myself with a dumbbell I was at 15 years old.
And can I pause you right here and just say,
Please.
and there are brothers and sisters, men and women, willing to work to rehabilitate these youth. Look at the work that you're doing. Look at the work that I'm doing. And yet our culture, our society is sending them off to isolation when we know that is only deepening the wounds. And what they really need is to be in relationship.
Well, that's I think the profound feeling that you're left with is that I've been doing this work for over a decade, and I've yet to meet one 15 to 19-year-old who I absolutely said they belong here. Not
Yeah.
one. They oftentimes need therapy, they need counseling, they need mentorship, they need school, they need hospitalization. I've never in my most, sort of reasoned mind ever met anyone who I thought you're better off here.
Right.
And so, but often these are, the 15 years old is like a few days past 14 years old, right? And again, there's that, irony that a society would lock up these young men, but there's also the fact that, when I was 14, 15-ish, I was a short kid, for one. I'm 5'11" now. I didn't grow until my sophomore year of college. I was like 5'4" or 5'5" when I graduated high school. So I can only imagine I was
Yeah.
probably like 5'2". So 5'2", scraping 100 pounds. And yet, many of these kids were walking around with their elbows out, their shoulders stuck up. And you're thinking, like, you're 90 pounds. Like,
But you remember too what it feels like to feel big. Remember
Yeah,
when you feel like you knew what was up when you were
yeah,
15 to
yeah,
17 because you listened to a couple of albums and
yeah,
you had a couple of things to say and you
yeah,
thought like, oh, I got this whole thing figured out. But man, we're truly in the infancy of life and
yeah,
self-knowledge in self-knowledge at that time. And
yes,
what needs to happen is what you said, mentorship, steering these men towards conscious decision making,
yep,
allowing them to have a reflection to bounce off of, someone that, and I say this with Sacred Sons all the time, but like someone that they think is cool. It matters.
yeah,
Not some therapist that's like not giving them any real reflection, but someone who has lived a life. And again, I'm saying there are many of us who are willing. And so right here, I want to come back to you and your story. I want to know what makes someone like Marcus Glover, what gave you the inspiration to be of service in this way, to give back in the ways that you do, and to help empower brothers and your sisters that need your help.
well, I would love to take credit, but I can't. I think, first of all, I've had and have an amazing family.
Yeah.
My parents are, I think I got the seeking gene from them. They were two kids from the Harlem, NYC community, in an era where Harlem was reflecting and probably not happy with its reflection. And so this was a really tough era in the 60s and 70s of, a lot of drugs that were being brought in from outside of the community. But through it, these were two people who were educated, who were curious about the world. And I think that is something that I am most grateful to my parents for, is we were very middle class and did not have, fancy things necessarily, but we traveled every summer. From the time that I was a junior high school student, we took big trips every summer. And so
And what did that mean to
I'm,
you? Like looking back on that, what does that mean to you?
well,
Expanding your worldview?
expanding my worldview for sure. And oftentimes we were in parts of Africa, and you observe many times people who have, and cultures that have tremendous dignity, although they don't have necessarily the material wealth that we so prioritize here in the US. They just have tremendous dignity for their families, their communities, and to see the regal and royal nature of people whose being mattered, who had substance and value, it was very informative for me as a kid. And so I always felt like I had to be a part of this community that has given me so much. And I feel that way to this day, that as a sort of member, if you will, of a people and a tribe, if you will, who have been underrepresented, overlooked in many ways, I have an obligation to make sure they're seen. And so much of my purpose, I think, in life is to be a seer and to see people's struggle, to amplify their victories, to acknowledge our hardships. So, sometimes I wonder, how does someone who has the bone of empathy as, their DNA end up in a environment like private equity and venture capital where I am?
Yeah.
But it's a situation where I just always warp things to suit my own interests and my own agenda. And my career work is no different. I just end up working for people of color, and to, you know, try to empower us to get to our next journey.
Yes, because in the work we often focus on, you know, right now mental health is a big topic, the physical pillar, emotional wellness, and spirituality. But there's also the financial piece, and especially for men, and especially right now, you know, this is a hard time for a lot of people. And so, you know, I guess my question here is, I feel the why in the work, but how? How did you like bring this journey of entrepreneurship to the point where you are able to be in service to so many? Because I feel like that's a big leap for a lot of the brothers and sisters who are listening. Because right, we all, I think in the core of us, at our hearts, we all want to help in some capacity. How did you flip that into also being your career?
Wow, great question. Really, first, just want to thank you for this awesome time together. Brother Jackson, you're a gift, and your precision to connect with your own muscle of empathy is amazing. So I just want to name that and thank you for this gift. The how is can only be described as lots of running into lots of dead ends and lots of redirection. I have been at this for a while. I'm not a spring chicken.
Yeah.
And you know, I think I'm also, at times I endeavor to study Eastern philosophies, and there's a principle that suggests that all we are really here for at all is to help people prepare to address their karma, right? So the microphones that you occupy, the seats of venture capital, the person who's listening who is a school teacher, whatever, the person who is pouring coffee at Starbucks, there is no large or small. All we are ever doing is playing our hand in preparing a place for people to address their karma on earth. And I really believe that. I wake up into that reality each day, that invariably we are all here as an act of service.
Yes.
And so there is a cognition, I think, that needs to be put into that you are already giving service. You are already the answer, right? Martin Luther King said even the man who was a street sweeper could do it with dignity, right? And so I really do believe in the dignity of our work. You know, some call that our Dharma practice, right?
Right.
So those are some of the grounding ideas. In terms of entrepreneurship, you know, the framing of this world that we live in is, you know, they started this game with this idea of free market capitalism, right?
Right. Yes.
Keynesian economics, you know, supply and demand, right? And that was sort of the grounding that we're all handed. This is the game, right?
It's the reality placed on top of nature that
Yes.
I don't know if we necessarily agreed to it. I mean, we do when we spend that first dollar, but we're born into it.
We're born into it. Yeah. Like, you know, the old saying, don't hate the player, hate the game, right?
Right.
Look, it's the game. It's the game, it's the game, it's the game, right? And so I think that part of my career journey was to really get inside this engine room of sort of free market capitalism, and you know, they're the instrument of private investment. There's public investment when you go to a Chase Bank or Wells Fargo and you ask for a loan. You know, there's the world of public investment where you can go to E-Trade and you know, buy Tesla stock and Apple stock. That's all public investment, right? The public markets. But then there's this whole other world called the private markets. And that is an inside game that traditionally women and people of color were not only left out of, but completely forgotten from, except to be a consumer of it. And I wanted to be a part of that package of representation, folks who showed up and have demanded a seat at the table. And so that over time is the career that I have chosen. And to be honest, the place of healing that I want to offer to communities, which is the opportunity to invest in some of our areas of disparity, like looking at some of our issues and challenges as they relate to health and education and wealth generation. Yeah. And the area that I am particular to, which is justice, how we find people who are coming out of jail and help them to stay out of jail. And the primary mechanism that I address is through gainful employment. And so anyway, I think that I don't necessarily think that I'm a born capitalist, but I think that I look at it as a machine, and I want to make the machine work for us as much as history has showed that it has worked against us.
That is very beautiful. And so, I mean, here we are. Like I'm saying, we're in a stressful time, certainly financially. Some say you could call it a recession. And what is the biggest hurdle? Because what I heard is that there's no access, but clearly you have accessed this machine. And so what is the biggest hurdle? Like if you were speaking to someone, what's that step one? What's that? Take your idea and this is your step one. This is your starting point. Because I believe there's, especially at this time, everybody's got a side hustle. We know that everybody wants to, or says they want to work from home and do what they love and have it be profitable. And what I see is you're saying that, yes, that is possible.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I think that I'm going to, if you don't mind, I maybe just open up with a super high level view.
Go.
And we'll get down to a street level science, if you will. But
okay.
I think what you see is that in the last, and I think it's in particular since the pandemic, the wealth holders hold as much as 96% of the wealth, which was since COVID and during COVID, there was something like $36 billion of wealth or more that was added to existing wealth holders during the pandemic. Like while most people were struggling, the wealthy got insurmountably richer during the pandemic.
Right.
And so this sort of caste system, if you will, is only getting exacerbated. Like the rich are getting richer. The idea that many people like to portray as the America that they knew and loved was this sprawling middle class and growing middle class, you know, the comfortable TV shows in the 50s and 60s, which showed people with comfortable lives and a job and supporting their families. that isn't the reality that so many people are facing today.
Yeah.
And so there is this sort of, I think, existential question that is only going to increase with time, because with each passing conflict, whether it's a pandemic, at times it has been the conflict around social justice, but America has, in the past few years, had these times of economic stoppage, which are dramatic, right?
Yeah.
When a third of the workforce is out of work because of a pandemic, or, you know, because of social protests, these things don't, they're not a recipe for success. So I think that there is a great reckoning around the distribution of wealth, and how we hold together our society. That is a really big question to ask. As you mentioned, you know, it as we're looking now, the toll has come collecting for the distribution of some payments during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, the government just hired 80,000 IRS agents.
Just,
and
you know,
and some of them are strapped, I heard.
some of them are strapped, man. They're, you know, hello, Main Street USA. I'm your tax collector and we need a VIG, you know. And so these are, you know, big tech, Google laying off 12,000, Facebook laying off 10,000. These stocks are depressed. So this is a, you know, a moment to recognize of tremendous challenge. But I want to provide a little good news. I think at the same time, the good news is that there has never been a better time in my mind for people with a bit of hustle. You know, the gig economy is thriving, right? You know, so the ability to have your 9 to 5 and pick up some work on the weekends, driving Uber, or I have a second apartment that I'm Airbnb-ing. This is a incredible, you know, moment with a really dynamic economy that allows for people to be creative. I have friends who are artists who sell and do a good business of selling their goods on Etsy and, you know, being makers and creators. It's an incredible time to be a dynamic person with interests, passion, creativity.
And also with leveraging the technology.
And leveraging
You know,
the technology.
because as Facebook and Meta gets a bad rap, as it should, you know, if you're a big monopoly, you should get a bad rap. But if you can leverage the technology, it can actually be beneficial. And in much of the healing work and much of the healing space is being connected through the technology.
1000%. So I often, in addition, which I think is relevant here, when I look at the future and when I look at, you know, the sort of Gen Z and millennials, and they are coming more and more into leadership and their voices are heard in the world, I'm even more encouraged about what we'll see in the world. You know, I don't know about you. I'm a pretty older guy. I can recall the rules of the game.
You look good, man. How old are you?
53 years old.
53. I'm 42.
Man,
You look good for 53.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will cash app you separately. But when I was a kid getting a job out of college, I remember the 2 rules I was taught. Son, 2 things: never discuss religion and never discuss politics.
Yeah.
I think that's all, you know, Gen Z millennials want to do is like talk about their values, talk about their beliefs. I don't think that they want to work at places that don't allow them to be seen and for their values to be respected.
Right.
I'm encouraged by the role that empathy is now taking in the commercial world, in the business world. People are using pronouns. When I was a kid, there was never any consciousness around pronouns, much less identifying with them. And so I'm
Or just, I
encouraged.
mean, I think there's a greater conversation of acceptance.
Yes.
That's very powerful. That's happening in this culture, like you're saying. Yeah.
So I think that at the end of the day, there's just reasons to be hopeful, right? I think that there's reasons to say, let's take a shot at climate and justice and gender and getting these things right, because there's some really dynamic souls on the planet that, you know, want to do some work and do incredible things. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah. And so where do you see your path going? You know, we need leadership. And I've seen so much talk about where are the leaders, you know, where are the men that are going to steer this? Because by my estimation, it's not on us to pass the buck to the next generation just yet, because we're here now. And so, yeah, what are you seeing out there? What is lighting you up or inspiring you about the new leaders who are emerging at this time?
Yeah, I believe it was certain indigenous cultures, Native American, for one, that believed that, you know, I hate the word, but the word I guess they use is tribal council, right?
Mm-hmm.
There weren't any leaders. We were all the leaders, right? The circle was the leader. And I think that is what is the embodiment of this community, Sacred Sons, and so many others,
Yes.
is the power to sit in circle and to be of service, but to also listen. And I'm hopeful that that is the embodied leadership that we will, you know, I think if there was anything about the past administration, to me, it was great because it was important to put a picture of what, when we describe toxic masculinity and when we talk about the savages of patriarchy, it was important to see it in real time, right? And so that to me was like a 4-year ad campaign for the damaged and wounded man, right?
I mean, if there was ever a revealing of a mask, it was like, me too. Right?
I mean,
that was that time.
it's like a 4-year reality show called The Wounded Man, right? And
Yeah.
so where do you go from there? You know, it's kind of like, if it's not clear to everybody, we need another view on masculinity, right? We need another expression on how to comport in the world. And I think that that is where I sit in circle, is to listen, to learn, to offer, and to elevate the power of community. I think the you know, not to pick on Trump, it's not my intention at all, but I don't think we need, like, honestly, I'm kind of I don't know, an idiot in the sense that I don't even know what we need a president for. Like, I don't, that to me is pointless, you know,
It's like old paradigm thinking.
it's old
That
paradigm thinking.
and not only that, but like that one person could actually handle the job of of truly leading the grandness that is the whole of the United States and the military. You know, I hear you. I have a
Yeah.
vision that in the future it will be families that lead. And like you said, the circle, the power of the circle, you know, but of the power of, you know, if you're talking about Trump, I mean, imagine if it was like Barack and Michelle, at least. We're leading.
At least, at least. You know, I think that this sort of old world monarch, vassal, lord, old European system style of governance is
It's
like,
not it.
weird,
It is
man.
just not it. And then in our current mythology, we see like Jedi councils of Star Wars, and we're looking at Samuel L. and Yoda sitting together talking. We're like, this looks like a good way to do it.
This is the way to do it. Man,
which like you said is sourced from the nature of who we are as humans. I feel like it's really in our nature to circle up and to meet one another.
I think that extends into beyond government, into business and religion, civic matters, and but we've got to reweave this world through a human, equitable framework that is inclusive, that is gender inclusive, that is ethnic inclusion, and sort of bust up these old hierarchies that are just tired, So I think, and I'm hopeful that that's the view on the world that we're headed into. Now, how much pain we're going to have to endure to get there, I think that is the threshold we need to try to figure out,
Absolutely. Because this is revolution.
Yes.
I mean, it's financial revolution, but it is spiritual revolution.
It sure is.
What we are actually engaging in is spiritual warfare. And it comes down to our self-worth as human beings. If we are not valuing ourselves, if we are not valuing the life of others, like, that is not a world we want to engage in. I don't want to engage in a world where in Iran they're threatening to kill thousands of protesters
for what?
over a wrongful death of a woman.
And
like, this is how is this acceptable? I believe that there are enough of us that have the conscious awareness to know that is not right.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? It's not to be righteous. It's just like, are we willing to sacrifice our humanity?
Right. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that with history at our backs and all that we know and all that we've held to be true about our dignity of our humanity, to think that a government would arbitrarily decree a death for 15,000 it's just hard to imagine, to be honest.
Yeah. But we felt the sensation of it bumping up against our borders through COVID, and there was so much talk of vaccine passports and human rights. And I feel like you're right. There is going to have to be a confrontation of some sort. It's not going to be easy. This is also a time they call it the greatest transfer of wealth in human history.
True.
And that's also what's happening. So, what does that look like as the old ways die off and the new emerges?
So I want to flip the question back to you that you posed.
Please.
How do you? What is the point of view that you have towards the future and leadership?
The long game. And I'm here for it, and Sacred Sons is here for it. And it comes, in terms of our offering, it does come down to masculine leadership. It comes down to standards. It comes down to values. It comes down to accountability, not only to do what you say and say what you do, but when we make mistakes, that we have a circle of brothers to hold us accountable when we're going through those pieces in our life that we all go through. We all go through these challenges. We all go through heartbreak, loss, grief. That we instill into the culture of men that it is not only okay to talk about it, but you have a space where it's safe to fall apart if you need to, because we need you. We need you at your best. And so what the work that we're doing is really, it's really rooted in changing ourselves as individuals, but it's not personal development. It's not for the sake of personal development. It's for cultural impact in the long run. And so if you look at our social media Sacred Sons on Instagram, you see a lot of photos of men emotionally going through it, cathartic experiences, healing, freeing experiences. And I believe that is good for the world. I know it is, because when that brother goes home and when he can be just a little more present with his children, when he can not continue to deepen into avoidance, but to engage with life, to become passionate once again, to be a good father, to be a good husband, and to be able to talk about it as men, that this is something that we are striving for. Because you and I know the story that we grew up with. It was all materialism and a womanizing, right? And so what does the new story look like for men?
And so I'm curious, thank you for that. I don't mean to turn the interviewer's mic on you, but I am as curious as you are. What has the role of technology played in having these conversations, the opportunity to perhaps deepen them? Has it been a helpful entity, or does it rob us of the true opportunity to circle with each other?
Yeah, I think certainly through the pandemic, it was helpful and hurtful. So like in my experience, we were holding calls with, dozens of men daily. At the same time, my 6-year-old at the time was going to kindergarten on Zoom calls. You know what I'm saying? It's like the technology is not the end in itself. The technology is a tool, and it's really dependent upon how we use the tool. And so if the tool can invite a brother in, like that's the first layer of resistance, and until ultimately he can connect, come in person, get into nature, get reconnected in those ways. This is largely like this rehabilitation type of work where we get to, like I said, get connected, get reconnected to ourselves and to the land. So like, yes, if we're using the technology as a means to get together in person, all the better. And then I just say on like the small scale, a lot of men just don't have friends. A lot of men have no one to just pick up the phone and go, you know what, I'm not okay. And so in this way, technology is extremely beneficial.
There was an article recently that talked about the fact that women have less dating options, relationship options, I should say, because of the sort of, I'm paraphrasing and maybe poorly, but the inability of men to cultivate, in essence, some soft skills that allow them to be, have a good relationship dynamic with a female partner. I think it was particularly framed around heterosexual relationships.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if there's any insight that you have about how men have, or how relationships are, could be romantic, could be friendship, but I'm just curious about men in relationship.
Be a bit more specific.
In
relationship, men are struggling in relationship. And so
yeah, I think that's what I'm asking is like,
I mean,
and
I guess there's a very
worse since the pandemic, or has it always been shitty, or what?
Well, on the severe end, we know that domestic violence increased. We know that spousal abuse, emotional abuse has increased. Part of it being locked down, but also, what do I want to say about that? Yes, it's gotten worse. And then there's the advent of technology and dating apps and more ways to fuck up.
Yeah.
And so in this way, the technology being a tool can be extremely disruptive to sacred union, to relationship, to being a parent, to being present. And I guess that's what I would come down to, is saying, whether it's in any form of relationship, what we're really dealing with is our own ability to become present once again. We're all distracted. We're all severely distracted because of technology. I feel I see that quite a bit. And so that's impacting all forms of relationship. And we have work to do. And what I know is, when men get together and talk about it, we make commitments, we make agreements, and we have somebody to hold us accountable on the other line. This is good, old-fashioned, healthy accountability. You know what I mean? And it works. And it's true to who we are as men and as humans. Is one of the things I hear a lot is, and by the way, we get, I would say about 60 to 70% of the men who come to us are recommended by a woman in their life, whether that's a mother,
Wow.
a partner, a lover, a friend. So many men are saying, hey, my friend said this would be good for me.
Wow.
And
That's powerful.
and that should speak for itself, because they know, the women know how men are showing up in relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so listening to that is crucial as well.
Wow. 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 It's interesting because I don't know if it in one sense it feels like our young men are struggling to wrap their hands around their manhood, and to hold themselves fully accountable. Um, and there are these deep pockets in culture that are these, escape routes, escaping your manhood and confronting yourself. So I just, to answer my own question, I feel like technology
Yeah,
is also this place of mass distraction that
big time.
but it's also harder. I feel like there's a lot of empathy that I have for young people in particular, because I didn't grow up, I'm not a, digital native. I grew up in a very different time where media was owned in the hands of very few. There were like, 5 TV stations growing up. There was a couple of, radio stations on the AM and
I
FM.
remember when MTV came out.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
remember
that was like game changing when MTV came
that?
out. But it was still like Big Brother telling you, these are your options, right?
Right.
Um, and then we repeat them at 7 and 11. So if you didn't catch it, it'll be back on. But this generation of digital natives that young people are, the hardest part is they think that they're peering into each other's lives. And so
Right.
there's this moment of parody where you see the guy who you went to high school with, and now he's driving a Lambo. I don't even know what a Lambo is, to be honest with you. I've heard the word. But yeah, okay, a Lamborghini. So you're under all kinds of pressure, right? Because he's got a Lamborghini and I'm driving for Uber Eats in my mom's car. They don't know that Lamborghini is not, it's leased. The company that's paying him as an influencer $1,500 a month gave him the car, right? They don't know that.
And maybe the model sitting shotgun is too, for all we know.
Oh yeah, it's all bought and paid for, And so on every level, I feel like this media dynamic is creating a lot of pressure for young people to have this hyper experience. And, I often, and I would love to share with the young people in the audience here, um, you know, the entrepreneur Gary Vee, he just recently put a quote. He said, um, the need to do things fast, he said, it's really what's fucking things up. He's like, I'm telling you, it's destroying young people, right?
Yeah.
I would argue he might be even a little responsible for it, because it's the whole hustle culture. You got hustle, hustle, bro. You know, and what it's just creating is a lot of anxiety in young people, right? Because
Yeah.
of this proximity to their perceived goals. And I think that to you asked the question, like, how do I, the how is stay at it every day, right? I'm 53 years old. It has just really clicked for me in the last, I mean, I would be on, like 10 years ago, maybe even in this month, 10 years ago, I can remember sitting in, this is no joke, this is true, Brother Jackson. I was sitting in a garbage dump at Rikers Island Prison, where I was locked down for like 4 or 5 hours. When a count is off in a jail, like one person is not in their bed, or
Yeah.
the whole prison goes into lockdown. In this particular case, I got locked down in the garbage dump. I'm telling you, of all of the things that you do not want to do in your life, you do not want to be in a garbage dump during lockdown at a prison, okay? And I look at it as one of the happiest moments in my life, because I realized sitting in this garbage dump, it was like the true moment of epiphany. I figured out where I was headed, right? Sitting in a garbage dump.
Hmm.
So I invite your listeners to realize, like, there's sometimes the unseen reality that doesn't show up on the surface of things. But when you have that inner core that is clear, and that is guidance, man, you've just inherited $1 billion. So I can show up here 10 years later, but at that moment of clarity of seeing in that garbage was 10 years ago. And I just have worked at that muscle, that direction, as I do every day. And I think
Yeah.
that is what I hope to maybe persuade this group of men and women, is the steel persistence, right? And I think that
Yes.
is part of the character that is in this men's work, in this men's circle, is learning how to recognize your own character.
Recognize your own character with persistence. Keep going.
Going, keep
Keep
going.
going. And there's a subtlety here in the persistence, which it's like, don't hustle, out of fear, out of scarcity. Hustle from love. Hustle because you love yourself. Hustle because you know you're worth it, because you know you're valued. It's a big flip that I believe many of us need to make, because of that distraction, because of the technology, because of the stress and pressure that you're speaking to. We all have to reclaim our self-worth and acknowledge that, hey, like, I am here now in this life, and I got just this one. So let's go.
And I don't mean to go Walt Disney on you, but whistle while you work. Like, I thought about that Disney classic from, whenever ago, but it's true. Let your work be your play, and let your play be your work, right? In like, work with a sense of play and joy, and like, sing while you work,
Yes.
rap while you work, dance while you work, like, really be in it, be in the work. Um, don't labor and toil with a sense of frustration and hate, and and toil, like, even if it's all of those things, right? Be Sisyphus. Like when the gods curse you and condemn you to rolling that ball up the hill, you give them the middle finger and say, fuck you, I'm going to enjoy this. That's my curse back to you, is I'm going to love it. I'm going to love every time this ball rolls back downhill and I got to roll it back up. I'm going to smile and laugh and have a sense of joy, right? I
Yeah.
think that's how we want to teach ourselves how to comport.
To teach ourselves and to teach the youth, the ones who are coming up behind us.
That's right.
And, you know, to continue to create a culture in all the ways that we can, you know, that are encouraging of us to sing.
Yeah.
More singing. You know what I'm saying? That was one of
Singing.
the things about the pandemic that drove me the most nuts. Like, why can't we have a concert in the park? Put free music out on every corner. We'll stand 6 feet apart, but let's play music.
Yeah.
They shut us down. And you know, that's the spiritual warfare aspect that, like, we have to reclaim that. And so each and every one of us can do that in our own ways, in our own lives. I think that's a great place to close this up. With that, is there any last piece that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are listening? I know you just gave them a lot.
Listen, I hate to be that guy and hate to be corny, but the paradise is in each one of us. You know, this worldly plane and experience that we're having, it's fleeting, it's ever changing, but that inner landscape of beauty that is contained in each one of us is the true paradise. And so I think our men's work, our women's work, our circle work is intended to dust off or shine up that magnifying lens to magnify that beauty so that we can see it clearly, but know that it is there.
Beautiful. Shine, fam. With that, Marcus Glover, Lockstep Ventures, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.